Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale on what has been a victorious weekend. Now, last weekend, I was critical of the women's basketball team for losing an inexcusable game to Washington State. Boy, was I wrong. Adia, I'm sorry. Coach, I'm sorry. I will never doubt you again. I told you you deserved a lifetime contract. And Shane, I still stand by it. After what we saw this weekend, that shows you why Adia deserves a lifetime contract.
Well, you picked them. You picked the men and women to collectively go 2-2, but you picked the women to go 0-2. I said 3-1, so I didn't give the women enough credit. But yeah, we'll definitely talk about the men as well. But the women deserve a lot of the accolades this week. Two very gritty wins at LA schools, which are both very tough. UCLA was ranked, but USC was actually higher in net. So they're both very tough games. Overtime in UCLA, double overtime against USC. And, they're finding ways to win. I think good teams find ways to win close games. So, maybe it's just a thing this year where Washington State beats Arizona at home regardless of the sport, because that seems to be the theme of the year.
Terrible. Shane.
Yeah. But no, a great couple of wins. So they got a big game. I know we're going to talk about it all. They got a huge game against Stanford coming up this week. Looks like they got some Adia Barnes bobbleheads coming out. Unfortunately, not with the double bird. I was really hoping for that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But we'll make a custom one day. But no, the women were great. The men were fantastic as well. And it is a victorious week. And you never get too high with the highs or too low with the lows, but we'll enjoy it for what it is.
Well said. And let's get right into it. Well, first of all, our guest on the show, want to tease this, the voice of Pac-12 Networks, the lead play-by-play voice, Ted Robinson, who we had on about a year ago, joins us once again. Really looking forward to catching up with him. Great insight that we got last time. And we will talk about the famous Bryce Drew shot, and Ted on the call. I mean, that's a call in college basketball history. That's like a top 10 call, I would think. Just for the Cinderella team beating, a big team. And so Ted's the voice of that. And now he's calling Arizona games on the regular football and men's basketball. So looking forward to catching up with him. But first, it is time for our buy or sell segment, which is presented by our friends at Ice Shaker.
I brought it in too soon this time. Yeah.
Yes, just a little bit. Check them out, iceshaker.com. You can get one of those beauties that Shane has, or one of these right behind me here. These half-gallon jugs, if you're watching on the YouTube stream. Check them out, iceshaker.com, or buy them on fanatics.com. And if you go to iceshaker.com and you want to get one of these wonderful things, use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C, for $5 off. All right, Shane, number one, let's get right to it. Oh, wait, you're going to be surprised. Shockingly, I was wrong again. The women's basketball team is for real and is built to make another deep run in March. Buy or sell?
Well, I was right there with you, Eric. I mean, I thought that my expectations for them were too high this season, and they probably still were. And the games against UCLA and USC could have gone either way. But I think that, like I said, good teams find ways to win close games, and they found a way to close. So I'll buy whichever. What was the question? We'll buy whichever one is more favorable to Arizona. What was the buy or sell question again?
Well, the buy or sell question was that Arizona is for real.
Oh, yeah.
And is built to make another deep run in March.
I will buy that they can get there. I think they're starting to come together a little bit. Remember, it's funny, we talked to Adia Barnes about win probability, and she didn't know that Arizona was like a 0.3%, had a 0.3% chance, according to our friends at ESPN, to beat Oregon State after they fell behind late in that game. They had a slightly better 0.7% chance, I think, to beat UCLA when they were behind 11 in that one. And then the game against USC it went back and forth. They let a late slip, but
I saw the end of that one. That was fun. That was a fun finish. Maya Naji, big time.
Maya Naji made a big shot. Yeah. Jade LaVille, the ASU transfer, made some big shots. So it is still a little bit by committee, like who's going to take over late. Although Kate Reese had the game of her life against USC and put in some big minutes, had a big 3-pointer late in that game.
Yes,
so,
she did.
The team is starting to gel, I think, late. They still have a long way to go. But the nice thing, Eric, and we talk a lot about the importance of getting a top 4 seed in the tournament if you're on the women's side, because you get to host 2 games, up to 2 games in the tournament. Arizona's right back in the mix for that. They were looking at probably a 5, probably a 6. They're 6-ish I think going into their last set of games. Now, I think that they're right there. And unlike on the men's side, there are plenty of chances. There's opportunity after opportunity for a great win because 7 of the top 28 teams in the women's side in net rankings are in the Pac-12, a full quarter of the top 28.
Crazy, isn't it?
So you got Stanford coming up on Thursday. They're going to do a red out there. Hopefully they get a really good attendance for that game, even better than they have been. Colorado and Utah, which they both lost to in close games, they come to McKale. So they're going to have plenty of opportunities for great wins. And even, they finish the regular season, say 3-3, and they win a couple of tournament games. That could be enough to get them in the top 4. So we'll see if they keep momentum going. They haven't been as dominant at home as I thought they would be, but they've been better on the road. So it kind of evens out. But hopefully that home court advantage will be big against Stanford this week.
Okay. I'm going to buy and sell part of this question. Buy that they're for real, that I undersold them last week. I'm going to sell because I don't still seeing them without a true number 1 scorer making a deep run in March.
That's fair.
And I'd say deep run, Elite 8 or better. I think Sweet 16 is probably the ceiling for this team as I see it. I hope I'm wrong. Once again, would love to eat crow figuratively on this one. We'll see. Okay, switching to the men's side, Shane. Pretty easy one. Number 2, Azuolas Tubelis should be a consensus first-team All-American and serious Wooden Award contender for best player in the country. Buy or sell?
I'll buy as long as he keeps producing like he has the last couple. I don't expect a 40-point game every night. Don't get me wrong. And he might have put up another win against Oregon State if he needed to. He had
he could
16, 17 at halftime. So he was on his way. Then, of course, he didn't have to play much in the second half, which was nice. So, yeah, he's right up there. There was this metric I saw earlier. I think it was at evanmaya.com that had Tubelis as the number 2 most important player in terms of efficiency related to his. I don't remember all the metrics,
it's him and Zach Edey from Purdue.
Yeah, as Casey Jacobson would say, all the nerd talk, but yeah, he's right up there as far as being one of the most important players on his team.
Yeah, and I think that's it. So Tubelis to me is absolutely a consensus All-American. I mean, Edey right now with Purdue, Purdue is not very good without having a 7'4" guy or whatever he is. Arizona, even without Tubelis, is still a decent club, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong about Purdue, but I think he's legitimately number 2 in the country as far as being the best player for the Wooden Award. And I think he is right now. It should be an easy choice for Pac-12 Player of the Year if and when that announced.
Pac-12, Pac-12 Player of the Year, absolutely. And then All-American, it's funny because it's supposed to be an individual award, but if Arizona keeps winning it the way they have, he'll be a second teamer for sure. He should be a first teamer.
Oh, there's no listen, if he's Pac-12 Player of the Year, you cannot make him a second teamer. You just can't.
Yeah, but a lot of people are going to look down on the Pac-12 because it's not a very good conference. And a lot of people, a lot of these voters go to bed early and they don't see him play, and it's ridiculous. I'm just saying he should be. The question is, should he be? Yes. Will he be? We'll see. Yes. I'm not so sure.
Yes. Okay. Number 3. This year's Arizona team, based on results thus far, does not appear to be that far off from last year's version. Okay, I'm going to say this before I give the caveat here. Yes, we know last year's version had Ben Mather in a lottery pick, Dalen Terry a first-round pick, and Koloko almost a first-round pick. But, Shane, this year's team has beaten 5 ranked teams when they were ranked versus 3 last year at this point. What do you think? Buy or sell?
Yeah, so are you familiar with the site BartTorvik.com? It's another Ken Pom sort of site. BartTorvik.com.
No, I don't know who Bart is.
So Jeff Borzello at ESPN referenced this site when referring to Arizona and what they've done this year. So it's very similar to Ken Pom in terms of offensive, defensive efficiency. But my point is, you look at that, as of now, Arizona is 10th in offensive efficiency and 32nd in defensive efficiency, according to the site BartTorvik.com, which is very similar to where Ken Pom has them.
Okay.
Last year's team finished 7th on offense and 35th on defense. Almost identical.
Yeah.
So they're statistically, they are very similar to where they were last year. And that is why I think that Tommy Lloyd's coaching job this year has been even more remarkable.
You're right.
Yes, he still has 2 holdovers from the Sean Miller era, Tubelis and Kirk Kriisa. Those are important guys. But this is more his team than it was last year, and he's dealing with less talent. I mean, look, if this team stayed together for a couple more years, then maybe they'd be on the same level talent-wise, but they're not there yet. Kylan Boswell is on his way up. Henry Vasar, we hope, will develop into a starter eventually. He still could, but he's not getting any minutes right now. But they kind of had to piece things together with some transfers and with Boswell fortunately reclassifying and developing Umar Ballo. You know, I as much as I admire what Sean Miller did in Tucson, I can't imagine a guy like Umar Ballo would have improved in year to year under his leadership, like the way he has with Tommy Lloyd. So they look similar. They are. In Pelle Larsson, I think even though he's coming off the bench again, he's a little bit better. He's a little more aggressive than he was last year. Kirk Kreese has been on fire, and that's going to be huge come tournament time, whether he's shooting well or not hitting anything like he did.
Yeah, you go as Kirk. Listen, I looked this up, Shane. When Arizona loses this year, their 3 losses, Kirk Kreese is shooting like 18%.
Yeah.
On the year, he's averaging like 35%.
Yeah, so it's same thing last year. Same thing last year. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can literally look at, and we'll say this every week, but I finally did the math. Like, if Arizona is going to win games, it's because Kirk Kreese is, shooting normally. If he shoots terribly, Arizona's not winning against a great team. I'll say that. I
think Kirk Kreise is the biggest key to their tournament hopes or to their Final Four hopes. It's as great as Tubelis and Ballo have been, and I'm sure will continue to be. Kreise in his decision-making, his shot ability, his ability to limit turnovers, and frankly to behave himself and not pick up stupid fouls like the technical he did against Tennessee. That's going to be the key, especially because he's fearless. He's crazy. He's fearless, and he's not afraid to put up big shots. I don't know about anyone else on this team if I would say that they're fearless. Like, do they really want the ball in those pressure situations? Maybe, but I know Kirk Kreise does. For better or worse. And I think Arizona's going to go as far as Kirk Kreise takes them.
I would probably agree with that. Now, let me also say this. I'm just going to throw this in there, Shane. I'm sure we'll talk about this over and over. If Tubelis comes back next year, Ballo will probably be back. Arizona is the consensus number 1 team to start next year, in my opinion. Nationally.
I don't know enough about the rosters and the other team to
I don't need to see anything else.
Well,
I'm telling you that they are number 4 this year. Mm-hmm. Now imagine if you get pretty much the same team come back without Ramey and Cedric Henderson. And you can add a couple.
Does Henderson have another year of eligibility though? Because
I'd have to double check. I don't know often.
Because with the COVID year, I think this is his 4th year. We should check on that. But yeah, I know Ramey is definitely gone.
Right. But I'm just telling, and the Final Four is here. I mean, next year the stars align.
Yeah.
If Tubelis comes back, now it's a long way to go. We'll get there and we'll talk about that closer too. All right, Shane, this is a bonus question. I'd like to throw this in here. I think you tweeted something about this the other day. If you're a ranked team, there is never an excuse for rushing the court after a big win by yourself.
I'll sell that just because I would say more like if you're like a blue blood team, like if you what's that?
No, I was going to say, so if you're Arizona, is there any circumstance that Arizona fans should have reason to rush the floor?
I don't think so. And that was in reference to you're referencing Indiana rushing the floor against Purdue. Yeah. Indiana was, I don't know, they still are. They were at one time a blue blood, and it would have been embarrassing. Like Bobby Knight would have been embarrassed to watch this team or watch the fans rush the court after they win a big game. So a top 25, like there are like certain teams like may, pop in or out of the top 25. And so I think it's okay from that perspective. But if you're, and I know people will agree or disagree on what a blue blood program is, but if you're consistently a top program, a team that is going to be in the tournament every year and could potentially make a Final Four run most years, then I think it's a little embarrassing to have your fans rush the court. I was a little surprised. I mean, not surprised, but maybe a little. I scoffed a little bit at Indiana fans rushing the court.
Okay, I have no problem with Indiana fans rushing the court. I have no problem with Arizona fans rushing the court under a couple circumstances.
All right.
Number one, you're unranked and you beat a top 10 team. Okay. But if you are ranked and you are, let's say, outside the top 15 and you beat a top, let's say, 3 team that's really good, I'm okay with it.
I don't know. I just think about, well, and I can't think of an example like that off the top of my head, but I think back to Arizona and Florida in 2012. I mean, both teams were ranked in the top 10, so it's a little different. As exciting, as crazy a comeback as that was, and as electric as the atmosphere was, I was there. It was great. My favorite memory, McKale, of all time. Fans still didn't rush the court because we don't do it at Arizona. We expect to win those.
Well, you
games.
act like you've been there before, right?
Right.
It's like rushing the field. You know, when you think back to the Arizona Oregon football game in 2009, that's the ultimate. I mean, you know, I was talking to a player, I think it was Rick Elmore, about that the other month, and I was like, what were you thinking? Like, you're standing on the sidelines and you're watching these, like, stay away. What are they doing? What are they doing?
Yeah.
I mean, that was the ultimate in stupidity
Well,
for fans rushing the field.
I wouldn't have had problem with fans rushing the field, but when Oregon's got the ball down a score, what do you, Jeremiah Masoli and LaMichael James and LeGarrette Blount, I mean, Oregon was going to go down and score a touchdown.
Right.
So it's like, what were you thinking? Like, if Arizona's got the ball and all they have to do is take a couple knees, then you can gather around and rush the field. But yeah, it's a different, we're talking Arizona football. It's a very different situation with them. I mean, we didn't personally, but Arizona football fans rushed the field after beating a 3-win ASU team because it was a big win for the program, maybe signifying a turn in momentum for the program and in the rivalry. It was the first time in 6 years Arizona had won that game, so I didn't mind that at all. But you know, the football program is a little bit on a different level than the basketball program, and I don't think there's any circumstance, unless Arizona gets to the point where they're just an average program, which I hope we never get to.
Yeah.
As long as Arizona is considered a top 25 team and a destination school, I don't think there's any circumstance in which I want to see fans rush the court at McKale Center.
Okay, fair enough. Number 4, Shane. I know Arizona hired a couple of coaches in the last week. Duane Akina being one of them. He was the architect of the Desert Swarm defense. So Akina returning to Arizona's coaching staff very well might be the most impactful move Jedd Fisch has made this offseason by herself.
You're including player additions.
Yeah, just in general.
Potentially, yeah. I remember we talked about, or I mentioned the possibility of. I didn't think Jedd Fisch was going to fire Johnny Nansen after 1 year, but I could see the possibility of bringing on like a defensive analyst or someone there to sort of act as a second defensive coordinator or just be another voice in the room. So in that way, I think Duane Akina may be that guy, the guy who's been there before. I don't think it's so much like a legacy hire sort of situation. So it could be impactful. I hope that it is. The jury's still out on Johnny Nansen. But I like the name. It's going to get fans excited. And I think that it was another example of why it was a good thing that Jedd Fisch has more room to spend money on assistant coaches than his predecessor did, because that's how you're going to build quality rosters and continue to build top 40 recruiting classes. Arizona was barely in the top 40, I think, this past year, which is fine. It's where they should be. And if you're going to keep doing that, you have to have guys like Akina on staff.
I like the Akina move, but I'm going to sell this one. I think Justin Flo and potentially Bill Norton, transfers from Oregon and Georgia respectively on the defense. I think that is more important. I mean, Akina is nice. He's apparently he's a very good defensive mind. But I'm just not putting that at the level at this point of getting some of these impact transfers. Bonus question here, Shane. So Pro Football Focus put out a tweet last week of the top 10 returning wide receivers in college football for the 2023 season. Number 8 on this list was Dorian Singer. Number whatever on this list, not in the top 10, was Jacob Cowing. Singer over Cowing, buy or sell, Shane?
Trying to not be biased, because obviously Cowing is back and Singer's not. And Singer was a big loss. There's no way around it. I would lean Cowing. Even I'm trying to be objective about it. I would lean Jacob Cowing. I think he's a yards after catch monster. He's maybe not quite as exciting, doesn't make as quite as many flashy catches, even though he can make some. But I think Singer probably made more of them. I know he had slightly more yards this past season, but I think Cowing's the guy I'd rather have had back between the two. So
absolutely,
I'm not big on Pro Football Focus to begin with, just because I feel like I know they don't do this, but I feel like they could just make up numbers and put it in, and people say, "Oh, that sounds good." These grading systems that they have. But And while Singer is great, he's worthy of being in the top 10. I would put Cowing right there with him. So I would still rather have Cowing if I had to make a choice. And fortunately, that's what we have. So
the reason Singer got on this is because of two reasons. Number one, he ended up leading the Pac-12 in receiving because he had a huge game against ASU. And Cowing at the end of the year kind of tailed off, whereas Singer stepped up because teams were focusing more on Cowing. Yeah. So I still think I would rather have Cowing. I think Singer is a very good football player. I think he hopefully will play at the next level. I think this list was mistaken. I'm just going to say that. All right, coming up next, let's talk to Ted Robinson, get his thoughts on what he saw at the McKale Center on Saturday, and much more here on Wildcat Country. Scooby, we sent you an ice shaker. They are a sponsor, courtesy of our buddy Chris Gronkowski. You have it right there.
I love my ice shaker. Fun fact: when I trained with Duane Gronkowski, everybody, when we were trained together, people thought I was the other Gronk brother. So it's kind of funny. But yes, I love my ice shaker. It is very good. I use it every day. I am a veteran to the ice shaker game, by the way.
What's up, Wildcat Country? Chris Gronkowski here. Use coupon code Wildcat Country at iceshaker.com.
All right, Shane, we brought this up last year when we had this distinguished guest on the show, but I remember exactly where I was in 1998, in March of 1998. It's just one of those moments in life that I remember. I was a freshman in high school, and I was sitting in my gym, in the gymnasium with like a group of people around a tube TV watching Valparaiso and Ole Miss. And it was the great call of Ted Robinson, which is still going to be played forever. And now he's the voice of the Pac-12 Network. We had him on last February, and now we have him on again this February because we heard him call the game on Saturday at McKale Center against Oregon State. So, Ted, welcome back to Wildcat Country. Great to have you on. My first question is, you got a chance to broadcast kind of a dud game on Saturday, but we loved it because Arizona was great. Just your thoughts on what you've seen, the progression from this Arizona team thus far this season.
Sure. Quick aside, Eric, Shane, 25 years next month. Can you believe that?
Wow.
That's right.
I didn't think of that.
And I talked about it during the game Saturday because Courtney Ramey made this fabulous overhand, probably 70-foot pass down the court to Tubelis.
Yep.
And I don't know enough about his background. I'll need to find out. But people forget the Bryce Drew play for Valparaiso. The inbounds pass was thrown by a guy named Jamie Sykes, who was a center fielder on Valpo's baseball team. Mm-hmm. And they purposely had him there because of his arm. And I've seen other instances of similar, without the fanfare of the Valpo shot in college basketball, where they have somebody who is either a quarterback or a shortstop with that kind of arm. And Courtney Ramey looked like that kind of guy with that pass Saturday. That was terrific. So to your specific question, since I first saw the Cats, which was the conference opener at Utah when they got kind of battered, two things have happened that would give me belief they have a much better shot in March. One is they're starting, and Ramey's the best at this. They're starting to hit the three, and I just don't believe you can win at the highest level in college basketball without having at least one person on your team that the other team has to guard, that they prep and they say, you can't let that guy get shots. And Ramey looks to me to be the best Cat at that. And he's playing that way right now. Second point is they're playing defense, and they didn't defend very well. To me, early in the year, Creasa didn't defend very much at all. He was pushed he was beaten pretty badly by Worcester in that first game at Utah. And I actually mentioned it the other night. He was out there. It looked like he was really giving just a better defensive effort and not just looking, quite frankly, to flop and to get brushed against and hit the deck. And that's what the Cats need. I don't know. You guys would have a better clue maybe than I. When you play somebody really good in March, who's your shutdown defender? I don't know who that person is yet. I may ask Tommy that Thursday when I see him in Berkeley. That, to me, would be the last question about the defense. But those two things, shoot the three better, defend better, are really what I notice now in early February.
Yeah, Ted, like Eric said, thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate it. Speaking of Tommy Lloyd, I feel like he's done a better coaching job this season than last year. Last year was great, but he's got, I think, less overall talent to work with this year. No disrespect to Ramey or the other guys they added to the roster, but I just think there was a drop-off, and it's more of his guys. It's less of Sean Miller's guys, even though obviously Tubelis and Creasa are still there. What are your thoughts on the job Tommy Lloyd's done with this year's team compared to last year's?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, the talent level And again, I kind of touched on this, and I don't mean to denigrate at all because it's not what I mean. UCLA or Mick Cronin, both teams lost 3 pretty good players off last year's team. UCLA's 3 guys are in the G League. One of them was a first-round pick, Watson, but he didn't play very much for them, even though he was a first-round pick. Kind of like Terry was a first-round pick. He wasn't necessarily a frontline guy, but he was a first-round pick. But when you lose a lottery pick who's got a chance to be Rookie of the Year, and then you lose a great rim protector in Koloko, the substantial talent Arizona lost is evident. And yeah, Tommy Lloyd's done a magnificent job. And what we all like to see are people get better. And, you're seeing Tubelis take a step forward from last year. Larson has taken a step forward now, his second year playing in that system. And then, obviously they've added the new bodies in Rainey and Henderson, but the obvious one is Ballo. And now you take a guy that was, spent 3 years, right? This is his 4th year in college, if I'm doing my math right? 2 years at Gonzaga, 2 years at the U of A. And now in his 4th year, he's made that huge jump up. And to me, that's what this has always been about. It's not the one and dones. It's take guys and make them better. And so Tommy Lloyd can stand and kind of puff his chest out and say with Ballo, I've done that.
It seems like and we are always get ahead of ourselves as Arizona fans, already thinking about March, even in early February, like we are. But it seems like in the Pac-12, at least on the men's side, it's a lot different from the women's side, where you just kind of have to avoid those landmines in order to stay afloat and try to maybe get that 1 or 2 seed. What do you think the rest of the month might look like for Arizona going into those last 2 big games at USC and UCLA? Yeah. What do they need to do to really stay focused? And because I feel like this team maybe gets a little bored sometimes, a little ahead of themselves, just to stay focused and make sure they take care of business until they reach that point.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I thought that was another good point Tommy Lloyd did. And I asked one of those delicate questions to him early in the day Saturday, because I was there for the Washington State game. And were you fearful going into the Oregon State game? You're coming off, you punched Oregon in the mouth and knocked them out pretty quickly. Are you worried about having everybody's attention? And Tommy kind of dismissed that. And they played that way. Good on them. The guys played that way. There was no taking Oregon State for granted. So where that goes is that there'll be a couple of games down the stretch where the Cats are going to have a big bullseye on their back, because other teams are going to look for that quad 1 win they need. USC, it's the last weekend. USC may be in a better spot by then, but if that game were tomorrow, USC would need that win to bolster their chance to get in. So that's what the Cats are, and UCLA is the same. They're the quad 1 target now that other teams need. So that's the first thing. This weekend coming up for the Cats should be one that, again, if they just, don't fall asleep, they should have everybody else is coming in swept. Now, Stanford's playing a little bit better, but still a bunch of other schools have come in here and swept that trip. That's what the Cats have to believe they're going to do. And then I'm not sure which weekend is the other ASU game. That's the other one that's going to be the bullseye.
It's the 25th, February 25th.
25th. Okay. Yeah, that's going to be the bullseye game for them too. And obviously the way the first one ended, where ASU felt pretty good, and then they just didn't play very well the last 5 minutes, and Arizona took the game from them. So that's down the stretch. That's what I would look for. And I think, Shane, your point's obvious. Look, you want to get the best possible seed, because eventually you're going to bump, and they did last year. I heard somebody the other night, people in Tucson, somebody at a restaurant lamenting, we only got to the 16 last year in Houston, whatever. Well, Houston was really good, really good,
and underseeded.
So, yeah, exactly. It's just, at some point you're going to hit that. To me, the round doesn't matter as much as the seeding, because that will help you. At least it betters the chance you're not going to face that kind of game until later on. That's where I'm going with that. So we all know. And look, the last point to all that is we're going to find out how everybody else looks at our conference, because right now, I've said this, we are what the Big Ten just was in football season, is what we are in men's basketball right now. We have 2 really good teams. And everybody else is kind of, and we all thought Oregon, probably not going to happen. Now we think USC is going to be on the rise with Iwuchukwu playing, and they could be the third. That'd be my best guess right now. but I don't think the conference has a great national rep. That's my sense. And I think we're going to struggle to get beyond 3 in the tournament. I hope I'm wrong, but I think that's how I feel.
Your temporary colleague at times, Bill Walton, would disagree with you. He'd probably say 6 teams make it.
14 out of 12 are going to.
Exactly.
No, that's the Big 10 and the Big 12. They get 15 teams each. We know that.
And we had Bill on the other week, and it was exactly as you. Oh, it was great. Good. I mean, he was exactly as you would have imagined. I just thought of this, Ted. Do we have a Ted Robinson U of A jinx here? You called the Utah game. You called the Washington State game. And in football, you and Yogi got a stretch of games where Arizona, it was brutal. I think you had Oregon, Washington, and another one, and USC in a row. Man, they give you, bad luck for you.
Yeah, we did 4 games. Then they win. We did 4 Arizona games.
Did you do Colorado?
Yes.
Okay, so so you got that.
We had a win. I know that.
Okay, I was like, good. Thank
Jed
you.
Still talks to me. I know that.
We'll get to that later on because I want to ask you about that. A guy, you had a great call at the end of the first half on Saturday. Kylan Boswell, who was a guy that I didn't really buy into for a while. I was like, he's going to be good, but not there yet. I mean, he's gotten great. And that shot he hit at the end of the first half, just your thoughts on what you've seen from him over the last, with the games we've called this season.
That's a great question because that is the one player, I've seen Arizona enough now that you go to shoot arounds and Tommy's heard all the questions. So you try not to, and I'm trying not to bother him with repeats or big picture stuff. I said, I just have one person I want to ask you. Talk to me about Boswell. Tell me about him. And he just said, it's gotten to the point now where, and I'm going to paraphrase, but he's treating him now. He's pulled the kid gloves off, so to speak. At the beginning of the year, he's hurt. He's coming away, moving across the country, young guy, etc. Now he's starting to talk about, okay, here's where we're going to need to get better. And I think that's an important player because with all, the foreign, the international players that have come in that are going to make their way at some point in and out of here, you want to make sure you keep that pipeline in to get high school guys. Arizona should be quite bluntly, Arizona should be what UCLA is. UCLA is the only program in Power 5 basketball with no transfers. Arizona should be that way. And I'm saying that's the quality of the program.
Yeah.
You should be such an attraction to any legitimate high school kid, prep school kid that you don't need to go play the portal. And I don't mean that as an extreme because
sure.
I used to talk to Sean about this his last couple of years, and Sean was right. He said the portal can't be your crutch. The portal has to be I go find a guy to fill one particular spot. And Sean liked, and I thought he was the first coach I can recall telling me what I thought the portal should be is you want to recruit a guy that's transferring. I mean, the portal, you want a guy that's transferring up because that's the guy that's mature, 1, and 2, he's got something to prove. Because he's been playing in the Ivy League, for example, and he wants to prove that I could have played at this level. And you had the kid, I forget his name, the Boston College forward a few years back that was like
Ryan Anderson.
Ryan Anderson, exactly,
yep.
Who was pretty good. And those are the kind of guys that, to me, Arizona doesn't need to go 3-4 transfers a year and remake their team like like ASU is doing it. Washington's doing it. Other schools in the conference are. The Cats don't need to be that way. But Boswell is the other kid, and I saw his parents the other day. I was going to go meet them, and I didn't. But I empathize a little bit because I was 17, actually a young 17 when I went to college a long, long time ago. And it was tough, but it forced you because you didn't have any option to grow up fast. And that's when I've looked at Boswell this year, I've said, okay, he's an older 17, but he's still 17, but he's coming to a national program here with, eyeballs on every game. And man, he has to grow up fast. And when I look at him now compared to when I first saw him 2 months ago, I see the growth.
He hit that shot from the parking lot. I mean, it was crazy. Yeah. He had a great call on that. It was cool to hear you and Matt. And we have Matt come on the show fairly often with us. So it was great to hear you guys together. So love that. All right. We talked about this off the air before the show. You said, you love going to McKale Center. Where does McKale rank, if you can give us, among your favorite Pac-12 basketball venues? Is it number 1?
Oh, God. In a runaway. It's awesome. I mean, McKale is... I've said it a few times when I've been in. I've been there 3 times, either 3 or 4 this year. And say this is what young guy. It's to the conversation we were having before we started about UCLA and Arizona, how they need to play twice next year. I mean, there shouldn't even be a question. Don't start down any roads about fairness and equity. I don't care. Next year, they need to play twice. And I said, both the players on both of the teams want to play twice. That's why they went to these schools, to play those kinds of games. And not every, but most visiting coaches, when I go to their practices or shoot arounds at McKale, most hit their team with a similar theme of embrace this atmosphere, because, what's left unsaid is we don't see it very many other places. They don't say that, but I'll say it. It's true. And, in our league, there can be some others. Washington's a great basketball setting when they're winning and the people there are engaged. Oregon has been the same, especially on weekends. They have a trouble on weeknights because so many of their fans come from Portland. It's a good distance, but their Saturday games usually very good crowds. It's kind of slipping beyond that, right? We don't have too many. Utah was great when Larry Kristoviak had it going well. And if Craig Smith keeps progressing, they'll be back. That'll be a terrific venue. But we don't have many of them, is what I'm saying. And the other thing that Matt said the other night during our telecast that is so right is not only are the McKale, it's sold out, not only is the zoo great, the fans are engaged, but they're smart. They know basketball. And that is something and I'm a New York kid, and I spent time in both the Big East and the Big Ten. So yeah, I appreciate the fact that people in Tucson and the Arizona crowd knows the game.
And, it's something Sean Miller mentioned years ago, is that a lot of venues, a lot of college basketball arenas, they'll wait for the home team to do something positive before they'll start cheering. At McKale, the fans know when they need a pick-me-up. Like I remember even against Oregon, when Oregon started to creep back into it in the second half, crowd got a little louder then. And so I think that's is that the intelligence you're referring to? Yeah,
that's a great call. That's a great point. Exactly that. Knowing, okay, now it's our turn to help. And, we'll be a 15,000 strong cheer squad right now. And look, that's the other. I mean, I'm just going to get basic here and blunt, but it's true. The stands are full every game. And it's the greatest advertisement for Pac-12 basketball. And as wonderful as UCLA's program is and the history of Pauley Pavilion, there are still games there where you'll see empty seats down near the court. And it's not a great advertisement for the product around the nation. And this is one of the sorest spots I've had in 35 or whatever years around this conference, is in basketball, is not doing enough in each individual school to sell the tickets, because that's the image we send around the country, right? We fight enough being out in this part of the country anyway, but then when people turn on games and they see no one there, how am I supposed to believe this product is really that good?
Yeah, McKale's doing great, not only on the men's side, but on the women's side as well, which is great to see.
Yep.
Let me ask you, Ted, because I feel like every team in the NCAA, when it comes to the NCAA tournament especially, needs someone who's willing to take over late. And as great as Tubelis and Balo are, I feel like that guy for this team is Kirk Kriisa, because for better or worse, he's fearless. A little crazy, but fearless.
Yes.
I think that Arizona might go as far as Kirk Kriisa takes them in that regard. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, man, that's a great call again, because I was going to say in March, what you want, you can't be too nice. And there's some of that with some of the cats I sense. Kirk Kriisa is the difference maker in that regard. And you're right, you're going to have to live with some. And look, during the season, you live with some antics. And, there's no question that Dante's dunk had intent because of who was there, whose chest he was planting his knee into. Okay, in March, that's a good thing, though, because in March, that's what you're going to want. And when you play, and look, the likelihood is if the Cats play long enough in March, you're going to play somebody that's physically bigger and stronger. That's one of the things I hear all the time from officials who work other conferences. Even they'll say, these guys, we're a little bit of an understrengthed conference. Even if we're taller, it's this thing. And when you have that, you better have somebody that plays above their size, and that's Kriisa. That's Kriisa. So I'm with you. And look, we know you see it all the time. He shoots a lot. He's being given that shot a lot because of the high-low focus of the other schools. When he makes them, it's fabulous. And if he gets into a game in a big setting in the 16s, let's say, of March Madness, and he hits a couple of threes in the first 4 minutes of the game, that's when I would feel good as a Cat fan, because he's going to swell in a good way, and he's going to carry himself with exactly what you talked about, Shane. He's going to carry himself with that little blank you attitude that is good, that you want to have in that moment.
And he's going to keep taking shots whether you like it or not. So hopefully he makes some early. Hopefully he'll make some late. Last question for you, Ted. You sort of alluded to this earlier, but play a game of would you rather with me. Would you rather be a 1 seed out in a region other than the West, like Arizona did last year when they played Houston, or would you rather maybe be a 2 or 3 but get to stay out West for the entire tournament, or for up until the Final Four?
I mean, I think it's changed a little bit in recent years, because you don't have to, they'll reassign you, right? Even if you get sent to some crazy site across the country, the first weekend, the second weekend, they'll bring you back closer. It didn't used to be that way. And I remember years when I did the tournament, I did a lot of years of the tournament, but in, let's say, the 90s into the aughts, UConn was in Calhoun's good years. UConn got sent out to the West because they were a 1, but they got sent out as the 4th number 1 seed, and they stayed. So they would bring, they'd have to bring books and take exams by phone and et cetera, because if they won the first 2, they were staying to go to the second weekend site. I think those days are gone. So it's not as important as to your question to me. If they're going to bring you back for and I don't know the sites this year, I haven't looked, but wherever the second weekend is in the West.
Is it Las Vegas this year?
I'm sorry?
Las Vegas. I'm sorry. I think it's Las Vegas this year, right?
It's Vegas. Okay. Yeah. So as long as you're coming back to Vegas, if I survive my first 2 games, then I'm not as worried about that. Some of this gets into personal habits. Certain coaches don't like to travel. Jim Boeheim is renowned in college basketball, doesn't like traveling. So if you have that mindset, and I've had Boeheim once or twice coming out West, and it was not good for Syracuse because he's just miserable. And Krzyzewski and everything, that's one of the what's the word? One of the challenges I think we've always fought out here is Boeheim never had to. I mean, my Coach K every year played the tournament in Greensboro,
right?
Charlotte. Where would you have? I mean, where else in North Carolina would you have venues? I mean, Raleigh. I mean, he played every year. He never had to travel. He had to travel once he gets to the Final Four, but my gosh, it was just, and you watching our teams, and of course it's been Arizona, Gonzaga, and now again UCLA jostling for those rare top spots from the West. And let's say only 2 of them can stay West. One's going back. Which one's going? And that to me is out of whack, because it never happens back in the other part of the country.
All right, Ted, before we let you go, I have to ask you about football. Now, you said Jedd Fisch still likes you, which is a good thing. Just the improvement, though, that you saw from Arizona last season compared to what you saw from them in 21, which was a debacle, let's say. Just your thoughts on just the growth of this program and what you expect from them going forward.
I do have the good fortune of getting to know Bobby Robbins through the years, and I've told him a bunch over the years. I mean, as recently as I think last weekend, at one point I said, you made 2 great hires between Tommy and Jedd Fisch. Jedd Fisch is a great hire. It's a home run hit.
Yeah.
And it's not just 1-loss record, because that's still on the track up, but it's vibe. It's exactly what Colorado just did with Dion is what Jedd did. You took a program that was on the table flatlining, and you put the paddles on the chest. That's what Jedd did. And I give him tons of credit for that. So it's all of the aura that he's built around Arizona football. It's exactly what Dion is being hired to do at Colorado. Now, of course, the other elements win, and it got better. And we all saw it this year. Offense, terrific. Defense, Jedd's the first guy to do it. Defense. And so it has to get better. It's hard because you still saw, and I tell this story. The last Saturday of football season, I was doing the Utah-Colorado game, which was Utah blows out Colorado. It was a horrible game. I fly home to California. I get home in time to get in my house, and I put on the Washington State game, and it's the fourth quarter, and Michael Penix ends up, and they get 700 yards of offense. Washington does against Washington State, which was a fairly good defense by our conference standards this year. So my point is, offense really really, really is dominating. And to me, this is where the Jed thing will be interesting, because one school in our league did really, really well this past year playing retro football.
Yep.
Run the ball, defense, Oregon State. They won 10 games with it. They won 10 games, quite bluntly, quarterback play that was probably 11th best.
Yeah.
10th or 11th best in the conference, and they won 10 games by doing it that way, because they went against the flow. So Jed's not going to do that. I know, you guys know that too. That's not how he's wired, but he's going to have to get a good enough defense that you can slow teams down. He's not going to have a defense that's going to smother people, but just slow them down so that I can win 38-28 instead of lose 45-41. If you know what I'm saying. That's the step to me that I would hope to see for Arizona football coming up in 23. Because Delora and that offense are really good. Really.
I'm already excited. Football season can't get here soon enough. And I know people don't want to hear that since we're in the midst of basketball season, but I am super excited. We just want to make a bowl game, Ted. I mean, we haven't seen that in a long time. So the progress from where we were winning no games for 20 something in a row to now we're talking bowl legitimately. It's exciting. But thank you so much for joining Shane and I. Always great to catch up with you. Great insight and one of the great voices of our generation. 25 years. Now I'm feeling old. Holy crap. Thanks again, Ted. Good to chat with you.
Nice to be with you guys too. I hope I see you soon in Tucson.
If you're looking to add value to your sports cards, you've got to check out dtsportscards.com. They're an authorized dealer for PSA, which means you'll get great prices on your submissions if you go through them. And for just $2 a card, DT Sports Cards will take a close look at each card you submit and let you know whether it's worth grading. I just submitted some high-end hockey cards. They took a very close look, said they're good to go, and they all earned a PSA 10 grade, which tripled the value of each card. DT Sports Cards is located right here in Arizona. They provide quick, personalized service through email or direct messages. Find them online at dtsportscards.com and check them out on Instagram at DT_sportscards.
Great talking to Ted Robinson, but he told Shane and I a very interesting story off the air, and I thought it was great, and I just want to share it here. He said, did you know that old Big East coaches voted former Suns coach John McLeod, who ended up being, I believe, at Notre Dame for a while. Yep. They voted him coach of the year in the conference twice. Why did they do that? Because they wanted to make sure that he was retained at Notre Dame. This was according to Ted. Great story.
They wanted to keep playing against him.
So Tommy Lloyd, Bobby Hurley should be coach of the year. I think he's done a great job. His teams are very, very intelligent always.
Eric, he's no Wayne Tinkle, but
Wayne Tinkle should all timer, but poor Wayne's got a really bad team. I mean, they stink. I mean, they really. But Bobby Hurley, I mean, Shane, what he's done, he definitely. To hear what Ted said about Hurley there, it's interesting stuff that.
Well, it was your idea to bring Ted on, and he was willing to join us. We appreciate it. He's a great interview. I love talking with him, not just because he agreed with me on a lot of stuff, because he's got he loves basketball. He loves calling the games. He loves calling the basketball games and the football games, and that energy just comes through. And so would love to have him back on again. But yeah, great pick. And then, Bobby Hurley for coach of the year. In all seriousness, though, it's crazy how his teams continue to fade. They get their hopes up and everything seems to be clicking, and then the wheels come off that program almost every year with him. It's crazy.
Yep. It is always something. And you know what, Shane, I'm not really going to object to it. It's actually kind of fun to watch. All right. This segment is presented by our friends at DT Sports Cards. As you can see that pretty cool logo behind me. Shane, tell us about what's coming up with DT Sports Cards and their next card show.
Well, so I'll be there as a seller for the first time. I was going to be there at the card show in January, but that card show didn't happen. Got pushed back to February 25th. It will be from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. February 25th, which is a Saturday at 944 East Chandler Boulevard in Chandler. Come check it out. I'll have some cards to sell. And I know you're going to mention this as well, but the Toast and Taste event we are going to be hosting or emceeing on February 17th. I know you're going to have more details on that in just a second, but I want to show for those who are watching on the stream here some of the giveaways we're going to have. We have a card here.
I don't even know.
Courtesy of you can see it here, of DT Sports cards. It's a quad patch of, so you got Rondé Hollis Jefferson, Stanley Johnson, Kevin Newman, and Scott Kingery out of 99 National
Very
Treasures.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be a raffle item. If you sign up, if you get a ticket to the event, you'll be entered to win that. You'll also have a chance at a couple of ice shaker bottles, U of A theme ice shaker bottles. I'm not going to take them out of the case because they look real pretty. I want you to have the full experience to open it up, but they are U of A logoed ice shakers. And then we will raffle off a couple of books, Rich Rod versus Graham, by some no-name local author. So
named Shane Dale.
Couple books, a couple ice shakers. DT Sports Cards is been gracious enough to donate a card for the raffle auction as well. So come check that out. Fill us in. Tell us the details on that one, Eric.
Yeah, so last chance to buy your tickets to the Toast and Taste event with Rocky LaRose is this Friday. You can go to alumni.arizona.edu/events and get your tickets there. Shane and I will be hosting. Very, very excited to be able to do that and get a chance to talk to Rocky. And you and I actually get to be on stage, which, as long as we've done this podcast, we have only met in person maybe 3 or 4 times in those 2.5 years. So it'll be nice to actually do a live show with you, believe it or not.
Last time I saw you was the Territorial Cup game. And
that's
four most stressful hours of our lives.
That was not my favorite game of the year. I know some people voted it as theirs, not mine. But very much looking forward to the Toast and Taste event, and we hope to see you there. All the money supports Arizona scholarships, and we want to get the brightest down to U of A, and this is the way to do it. So check that out, alumni.arizona.edu, to be able to buy those tickets before this Friday. All right, Shane, let's make a couple of predictions. First of all, the Super Bowl. Make a pick on the game. Now, the Eagles are a 1.5-point favorite. We have never picked the NFL on this program, I don't think. Yeah. But the game is here in Glendale. Give me a score prediction on this one.
Oh, Cardinals aren't in it. Bills aren't in it. I don't really care. All right, I'll give you a score. I'll give you a score prediction. I'm thinking. I feel like the Chiefs have been a charmed franchise this year. They keep finding ways to escape difficult situations. Even in the regular season, they won close games against some bad teams. I think the Eagles have been a little more dominant wire to wire. I know the Chiefs have been there before, but I think the Eagles are a little more well-rounded team. And I think that the Chiefs might actually miss the playmaking of Tyreek Hill in this game a little bit. So I'll go the Eagles by a field goal, say 27-24.
That's a great pick. I was actually kind of leaning something similar myself. I have the Eagles at like 30. No, I was going to say a little bit lower scoring. I'm going to say 27-20. Okay. I think the Eagles defense is a lot better than I gave them credit for. I thought the 49ers would give them a game, and Brock Purdy got hurt, but they didn't. Yeah. So I think they hold Mahomes somewhat in check and find a way to win. I actually will be there. Shocking. I've never been to a Super Bowl, number one on my bucket list for generic sporting events. So I'm really excited to do that and check that all out. But I think we're going to be seeing the Eagles win their second title in, I think it's 5 or 6 years. Unfortunately, this time, though, there will likely not be a Super Bowl MVP from the University of Arizona as there was the last time.
Well, and hopefully, for your sake, the game is half as good as the last game you went to at that stadium, the college football playoff semifinal game.
It was, yeah. No, by the way, I was at. This will be the 4th game in this year of football. I was at the Cardinals Saints game, which is the only game the Cardinals actually won at home this year. I was at the Cardinals Bucks game, which was Tom Brady's one of his last regular season games, which was dreadful, but went to overtime. And then the TCU Michigan game, and then obviously this one. So
you see, someone noted that whoever wins the Super Bowl will have more wins at that stadium than the Cardinals did this past year.
And there's a reason Cliff Kingsbury is not still employed. If U of A needs an offensive coordinator next year,
they could do worse.
Kidding. All right, let's give a couple of picks for the college basketball games this week. So the men's team is on the road at Cal, who's one of the worst teams in the country, and then at Stanford, who's been pretty good, minus a pretty dud of a Sunday effort against Colorado. And then the women's team in focus nationally Thursday night on ESPN against Stanford, and then they take on Cal as well. How many games combined will the Arizona schools win, Shane?
I predicted 3-1 last week, and I was off by 1. I hope I'm off by 1. Yeah, and I hope I'm off again this week because I'm going to say 3-1 again. I think the men take care of business against Cal and Stanford. Stanford, concerned me a little bit, but then Colorado whooped them. I think the Cardinal coming back down to earth. I think Stanford's going to make that a closer, like kind of low scoring, grinded out kind of game that might make us sweat a little bit. But I think Arizona the men's team wins both. I think the women, I might pick the women to beat Stanford, except Stanford just lost to Washington a couple days ago. And I think the Stanford ladies are going to be focused and ready to go for this game. And plus, like I said, for whatever reason, the women just aren't as dominant in McKale as the men are. So I think Arizona makes it a close game, but Stanford probably wins. But I think the Wildcats come back and they beat Cal too. So I think we're looking at another my prediction is another 3-1 week. Hopefully I'll be wrong and it'll be another 4-0 week.
I hate to agree with you, Shane, but I'm going to say 3-1 as well. I just don't know that they're ready to beat Stanford yet. They don't have that leading, that really dominant scorer as you and I had discussed earlier in the program. So I believe that it's going to be a close game against Stanford. I think they come back and beat Cal this weekend, and then I think the Wildcats demolish Cal on Thursday night, late game. You won't need to stay up to watch the end of that one unless you want to watch the bench players, because it's going to get ugly. I think the game against Stanford is going to be tricky, but I think the Wildcats win that game by close to double digits. So 3-1 weekend, and we will celebrate. And listen, if they go 4-0, then we can really start talking about the women's basketball team in March. I'll just say that. I mean, Absolutely. Show me something on Thursday night. I want to thank Ted Robinson for joining us. Great to catch up with him once again. For Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks as always for listening. And as always, bear down.